We talking about some of the top players in the league.
But the reality is that the running back is the only position where you are a car. You are a new car on that showroom floor. The minute we take you off and we drive you, your value goes down.
Let me get right to it. Running backs are getting screwed over by the National Football League.
Oh, yes, they are. Running backs have always been the stars of the National Football League. They're every kid's favorite position, and the position that we fight over with our buds in fantasy football. So, with how significant they are to all of us fans of all ages, why all of a sudden are they so severely underpaid? Well, the current issue of running backs is that they are too replaceable. That wasn't always the case. Let's dive into it. Since the beginning, running backs have been the showcase trophy of the NFL. For such a long time, NFL teams have always drafted and sought after star, Hall of Fame talented running backs to be the top player on their teams. And rightfully so. For decades, running backs were deemed to be the driving force to success. And if a team wanted to be contending for a Super Bowl, they needed a back to lead their way to a championship. This is true in how the game was structured back in the 40s up until the late 2000s. Running backs were a premier position then, and during that time there was a scarcity of elite talented running backs. Then came the 2010s era, which brought on massive changes to the league. There was a dynamic shift in the rules of the game of football. From inside to outside, there was huge pressure on the NFL to take priority of player safety. It started with players not being allowed to land massive hits on defensive players, like wide receivers. Then, from leaning with the head on a tackle, this created an opportunity for the passing game to be utilized in a way it never was before. These rule changes had massive impacts in the game of football, and if I were just to list them out, we would be here forever. Analytics. When we talk about this time period, we can't forget analytics finally come into the picture of football. The findings that analytics had revolutionary conclusions to the game, starting with running backs not being as important as they once were thought of. Through years of statistical analysis and collection of data, there was a hated, and trust me, I hated it at first as well, but factually backed finding that offensive linemen were the real driving force in a running back success and the offensive run game success. It took times for teams to realize this though. Some ignored and even criticized the analytical football community for even thinking of this. Now you know where the value of running backs started and how it changed throughout the years. If you're enjoying the video so far, all I ask is that you watch to the end. There's more content for you to enjoy. Next, we'll get into the real problem with running backs, and that's the money that they want. And this leads us to now, and the conversations of elite status running backs going to the media, holding Zoom calls, while not being paid as much as they think they deserve. I would even say that they're wrong to think this, because running backs have always been, and always will be, the most physically demanding position in the NFL. They deserve the money for what they go through, for what the toll their body takes. I mean, the beating that they take every time they take that handoff and get tackled by these massive defensive linemen and equally physically gifted linebackers is incomprehensible. I mean, I would shatter. You would shatter. We wouldn't be able to take that stuff. And the guys, like, they have to build their body, like it. But there's no real solution to this. It's not as simple as making teams pay top running backs more, because why pay a top running back when you can spend much less money on a guy that's, not quite as talented, but will get the job done and a little more. And as long as the NFL runs in a capitalistic, monetary way, there will always be the case of supply and demand for positions. It's like quarterbacks. They're the most important position in the game right now. And aside from that, the gap of talent from the top echelon of quarterbacks from tier 5 to even tier 3 it's massive. I mean, look at the difference between Patrick Mahomes and Derek Carr. The difference in the level of play is astronomical. You would never take Jared Goff over Patrick Mahomes. You would never pay Jared Goff as much as Patrick Mahomes. You just wouldn't do that. Another problem is running backs are the only position experiencing this. They are the only group of players that are actively getting screwed relative to what they do as a position. And on top of this, you don't hear other positions as a whole complaining about the pay they receive for what they do on the field. Even position groups such as linebackers, safeties, and defensive linemen, which have been proven to be less valuable than the likes of pass rushers, cornerbacks, quarterbacks, corners, quarterbacks, and wide receivers. I mean, you wouldn't pick a safety over Justin Jefferson or Devontae Adams. You just wouldn't. Even if they're at that elite level, they don't have the impact that wide receivers do. The point is, the NFLPA has an earth load of problems on their plate already. Their goal is to do what's best for the overall outlook of the players, not just one sole group. Every known running back holding out would surely force a team's hand to pay him more, right? No, it wouldn't. Every NFL GM would just go right to the backup and move on with their day. Because at the end of the day, your fresh, gifted, new drafted running back from the 4th, 6th round will get the job done without a peep. The best example I can say is Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard. It was evident that Pollard was the better back than Elliott from the get-go. And then when you compare the two players, Zeke's a first-round talent and Pollard's a 4th-round talent, you would think Zeke would be astronomically better. Well, he's not. I think a better example is Dalvin Cook and Alexander Madison. Madison was still putting up relative numbers for filling in for Cook when he was hurt, and that's despite Cook clearly being the better player, more talented guy, the elite back. And I'm not trying to hate on running backs. I want to see these guys make as much as possible. And for me, it was running backs that I wanted to watch. It was running backs that I wanted to be and to play like when I was playing football. And even today, running backs are the guys scoring touchdowns. They're the guys stiff-arming defenders. They're the beasts either trucking through a defense or are so quick they dodge these freight train athletes flying by. I mean, think about what made you love the game of football. It probably wasn't this guy or that guy. It was Barry Sanders, Emmitt Smith, Marshall Lynch, LaDainian Tomlinson, Jim Brown, Marshall Faulk, Adrian Peterson, Walter Payton, if you're that old. These are the legends we were so anxious to watch every Sunday. They're the guys that we want to see break out and run through the line of scrimmage out into the open field. And the problem is the backs of today will not see the love and pay that these guys once got in their lifetime. It's a new era of the NFL. And unfortunately, there is not a realistic and logical solution to gain the money they deserve in the current system the NFL operates at.